Greetings shippers, welcome back, and it's time to count down the top 10 ships of 2018. According to Tumblr, at least. Now, Tumblr has not had the best year, particularly at the end. However, we're still going to talk about the top ships. We did also talk about the Tumblr implosion that has occurred at the time of this recording. It's still unfolding. For some, Tumblr is 100% ruined, and for others, they haven't really noticed, which is hard to fathom for those who have been drastically affected, but there are those who are still using Tumblr as before, although currently, at the time of this recording, there are certain tags that just seem to be gone. And a lot of artists and other creators have indeed deleted and pulled their blogs, or been purged, or hidden. Still, at the time of this recording, there is a lot of fan content going on over on Tumblr, and a lot went on during the year of 2018. And Tumblr was used as the focal point for a decent amount of articles written about what was going on in fandom, for the mainstream likes to use Tumblr as the epicenter of fandom. A lot of fandom activity happens on Tumblr, but it must be reiterated that it is not all fandom. Indeed, for some people, the ships on this list may not even have been on their radar. It really depends upon where you perform your fandom and what kind of fandom activity you enjoy. But it's still interesting to take a look at what people were sharing and what exactly made the top. People do enjoy lists. Before we get started, if you haven't already, please do follow on social media to stay up to date, know when we're streaming, and just come on over and chit chat about fandom. It's a good time, I swear. We did a video counting down the top 10 ships last year, and there has been a decent amount of movement in the top 10. Because of the way Tumblr functions, things tend to move in and out of the top spots more frequently than they do on other sites, such as AO3, where works accumulate over time. However, Fandom Metrics functions by measuring the amount of works that are appearing with the correct tags, that being the tags associated with a particular pairing or fandom or whatever it may be. As a result, they jokingly note that if something isn't in the top 10, it's your fault. It also can be noted that sometimes things can be incorrectly tagged, so there may be more or less of a certain fandom or ship than people are aware of, particularly in fandoms where the ship name changes midway through and some people cling to the first ship name. However, be that as it may, let's take a look at what the top 10 ships were of 2018. In at number 10, we are starting off with a tried and true favorite from many people. It's Stucky, the pairing of Steve Rogers and Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier. Now, this ship has been going strong since the Winter Soldier. Even though Bucky appeared in Captain America: The First Avenger, people really took note in the Captain America sequel. It was at this point that Stucky actually moved to dethrone Stoney as the top pairing in the MCU fandom, as the MCU came more and more to dominate what people were writing fics about within that universe, as there is indeed a Marvel Comics shipping verse as well. Stucky still has its supporters, despite disappointment at how little interaction there was between them in 2018's Infinity War. Although for some, they felt that Infinity War ripped their Stucky hearts out. It really depends upon how one viewed that film. The fandom is still booming, the fics are abundant. If you're looking to dive into this fandom, prepare to be a bit overwhelmed potentially, because there is almost anything you could think of. This ship enjoys popularity across a wide arena of fandom spaces. Tumblr, AO3, Twitter, DeviantArt, Wattpad, pretty much anywhere you can think of, and has also been subjected to certain cultural movements, such as a few years earlier, the hashtag Give Captain America a Boyfriend, and just numerous discussions about what some have deemed the Stucky effect, that being that were Steve or Bucky female, the two of them would be together. There are lots of discussions about this ship from a variety of angles, and this is one of those ships that people tend to stick with. Even when they have other ships or flit in and out, a lot of them will come back to Stucky. At number 9, and almost sliding off the list, we have Malik from Shadowhunters, the pairing of Magnus Bane and Alec Lightwood. When Shadowhunters first began airing on Netflix, it created a huge boom in the fandom. While the book series is very popular and the movie less so, the series really gave new fodder for shippers, and lots of times visual adaptations of text-based formats can aid in the shipping discussion, although it is not necessary, as there are massive exception fandoms to this, such as Harry Potter, with some credit with the proliferation of fanfiction in general, though that is a claim that needs to be further examined. There is actually an intriguing connection between these two series. While there are still people shipping Malik and enjoying the series, this is simply a case of there being a lot of new material released within this year, and certain people have gravitated towards that, especially as the series was cancelled after season 3, with a wrap-up special being commissioned, as can be seen by some of the stuff that has leaped onto the list. I still get a decent amount of requests for Malik, but nowhere near as many as I did, say, in 2017, which is telling in and of itself. Number 8, soaring into the top 10, gaining 19 spots from last year, we have Toto Deku, the pairing of Todoroki and Midoriya. My Hero Academia Academia has become an absolute juggernaut of a fandom. This series is everywhere, from transformative fandom to beyond. There is just a huge fondness and is driving a youth resurgence and interest in anime and manga. So of course, it's not really surprising that it also has a huge shipping community. What is very interesting about My Hero Academia is that the top ships vary depending upon where one is in the world, i.e. the top Western ships are different than the top Eastern ships. Toto Deku very much enjoys a top placement here in the West, and while it is popular also in the East, it is not the dominant one. For fans of shipping and the ship in general, this couple's popularity is not really that surprising. There are so many works for these two, and so many AUs, a lot of it thanks to one of the ending credit sequences that places the characters in a kind of fantasy medieval style AU. There are people cosplaying that as well. It's just been a lot of fun. This fandom has produced so many interesting things, and it seems to be one that is going to surge up and remain one of the top fandoms. Even if it doesn't maintain its place on Tumblr, it has taken firm root in other parts of fandom, and sometimes those other parts are firmer. Because of Tumblr's rapid-fire microblogging format, sometimes things move very quickly there, and things can burn out in a way that they don't on other fandom sites. Although, it remains to be seen if things will continue to function in the same way after the Tumblr purge, and how this is going to affect up-and-coming sites such as Pillow Fort. Also new to the top 10 this year, we have Belle Ark from the 100. The 100 has had its moments in fandom history. Most people who know about the shipping in this fandom are aware of Clexa and the outrage that arose around what happened with that couple. Retroactively, some people's opinions on what occurred there have changed, but for others it is still a travesty that they talk about to this day. However, there are new ships that are now arising and starting to turn the tone of the fandom. This of course can happen when a series goes on for quite a while, and later in the game, a new ship can arise and become quite popular. Something similar happened with Teen Wolf, wherein at the very end a new ship arose, that of Theum, that is still on the rise despite the series being over. Teen Wolf is yeah. So now, Belle Ark is having its day. This, for those who are unaware, is the pairing of Bellamy and Clark. Yes, it is Clark's time yet again, so prepare for some discussions about which ship is better, because invariably that occurs when you have two popular ships that both include one character, although some of course will just OT3 it. OT3 is for everybody. And at number 6, it's Baku, taking us back to My Hero Academia. This is the pairing of Kirishima and Bakugo, and also in the West happens to be the one ship with Bakugo that will get you the least amount of backlash, as many feel that shipping Bakugo with anybody is abusive. There are many discussions occurring in the My Hero Academia fandom, some more pleasant than others. Baku has been going strong for quite some time and has continued to do so in 2018, gaining more and more support as the series has gone on and more people catch up with the manga and continue to watch the show as it airs. This is one of those ships that there's not too much contention around, with some exceptions of course, and there are others who enjoy other ships. Baku is beginning to take a very large place in the My Hero Academia fandom. Some posit that perhaps one day it will become the dominant ship. It remains to be seen, as there is much more My Hero to come. It's also actually the ship that I get the most requests for. Also joining the top 10 and at number 5 for the first time we have Sheith from Voltron, that being the pairing of Shiro and Keith. Sheith had a huge surge this year in popularity and people being willing to admit that they enjoyed it. We did a video update on both the Voltron fandom and Sheith pre-finale, and in that, part of what we discussed was how the reveal of ages as well as an intense plot between the two characters helped bolster shippers and bring many people towards the ship, as some felt comfortable to ship it for the first time and others began to see more and more romantic cues. There was also more pushback against the brother argument, specifically from the LGBTQ+ community, lots of whom were quick to say that sometimes that was a defense they themselves had used in order to get out of admitting that they liked somebody, particularly if they were in an environment where it may not be safe to do so. As a result, Sheith can be read many ways, depending upon one's subject positioning and also what they enjoy shipping and how they interpreted the cues. There are still some who are vitriolically opposed to it, and they have their reasons. However, on the whole, it became much more acceptable for this ship to be discussed, and the result is evident, particularly on Tumblr, as the Voltron discussions on Tumblr have been historically toxic, particularly against Sheith. So to see Sheith now in the top 10 really speaks to how much the environment on Tumblr changed surrounding that ship, depending upon where one was. Sometimes one can get trapped in a corner of Tumblr and it can be difficult to escape. Number 4, up one spot and holding strong, is Kook. It is, of course, a BTS pairing. BTS had quite the year. For fans of K-pop and the band in general, this has been a great time to be a BTS fan. And of course, there has always been a lot of fandom shipping when it comes to K-pop. That has never stopped. So it is in no way surprising that there is a BTS ship in the top 10. Although depending upon what one ships, if they do, then there may be some who are surprised that it is this pairing. There are often debates about which is the best BTS pairing. And of course, there are some who are simply against RPF ships in general, and they make them feel very uncomfortable. As a result, they steer clear. So sometimes if one steers clear of this, it can be easy to miss just how large it is, and not just on Tumblr. Indeed, this is something that in Korean marketing, they very much play up and play towards at times. It's very much an attitude of anything for viewership, and it's unclear at times how the actual bandmates feel about it. This is in stark contrast to a lot of RPF that happens over in the West, wherein certain creators make their feelings very well known very quickly. Although there are still some operating in a more nebulous state. Which of course brings us to number 3. Also moving up one spot, we have Fan, the fandom, Dan and Phil, YouTubers. People have been shipping Dan and Phil for a long time. A long time. It's something they themselves have played with, and there are lots of discussions about whether it is right or wrong, how they truly feel about it, and it's very contentious, let's put it that way. With the real person element, there's always a discussion about the negotiation of boundaries that needs to be had, and also questions as to whether fans are actually shipping the people or their personas or perceptions of who they think they are, and whether or not that makes a difference or not. This is one of those topics where people have very strong opinions about it, and it can be very knee-jerk, so it can be a bit difficult at times to wade through and see exactly what is going on. Though of course it must be noted that there are people who 100% cross the boundaries and go too far. Some feel that RPF very much needs to be taken on a case-by-case basis and kept separate from its subjects. Let me know how you feel about RPF down below. I want to know. Although number 2 is probably going to be more contentious for many. Surging up, also due to a sense of legitimacy that came with a film release, we have Reylo. Reylo is in at number 2. Like Toto Deku before it, jumping 19 spots. After the release of Star Wars The Force Awakens back in 2015, the top ship initially to come out of it was Storm Pilot, the pairing of Poe and Finn. People were talking about it, the actors were talking about it, it was everywhere. However, the second runner-up was Reylo, and it had a very divisive beginning, and some would argue that that is still occurring. There were some who loved this pairing right off the bat and felt that there was tons of UST, tons of chemistry, and that the plot was naturally going to develop in that way. They saw all kinds of parallels between characters from the original trilogy, and they were off. Others found this ship to be extremely problematic, abusive, romanticizing of dark elements that don't need to be fantasized about, and they were against it from the start, and people were at each other's throats. The Star Wars fandom at the time of this recording is a battlefield in many respects, and there is a lot of misreporting and misinformation out there about it, coming from a variety of sources on all sides. Suffice it to say, the one thing that is definitely true is unfortunately that things are a mess. For some, it is not a fun fandom to be in, and they steer clear. And still for others, they remain and have found their own corners and their safe spaces, and they are very much enjoying it. Post the release of The Last Jedi at the tail end of 2017 leading into 2018, the fandom was off again, and this time, a lot of it was Reylo. There is no denying that The Last Jedi could also be renamed Reylo the Movie. This is something that certain fans love and something that other fans absolutely hate. However, it made Reylo take off in a huge way. Reylo is now a significant part of the fandom and a significant part of the excitement and drive towards the film series. Indeed, there are some articles that go so far as to speculate that is what is keeping excitement about the film series alive. That, in and of itself, is much harder to track, for Star Wars is a legacy fandom. Another example being Star Trek, people will always be there to give it a chance, even if they have been hurt before. Even people who say they're not going to be there, a lot of them will end up being there, sometimes against their better judgment. Although admittedly, there are some who are 100% done. Be that as it may, Reylo has definitely left its mark. It was galvanized by the seeming legitimacy, and there was for some a bit of a vengeance factor after being told that their ship was gross and illegitimate. So some then turned around and became quite vehement, while others were just happy to produce their works, and it drew in more shippers because of the more obvious and for many less problematic chemistry that was demonstrated in the second film, though some still feel that this ship is heavily abusive.
You have no place in this story. You come from nothing. You're nothing. But not to me.
Others argue that it is tropey and that people focus on certain elements when they are discussing that as abusive and ignore others. It is quite the discussion. We've talked about Reylo a couple of times on this channel, so if you're interested, check out one of those videos. You can click the card or the link will be down below. It's going to be interesting to see exactly what happens with Star Wars and Reylo in general, especially as the new film is on the horizon. Some people aren't ready. I'm one of them. Before we get to number 1, some notable mentions, just interesting things that changed throughout the year. While many of the MCU ships hold firm, it was fascinating to see that a new one had leaped up into the top 20, and actually Stoney has moved very far down on Tumblr. Stoney has some diehard shippers, but it is no longer in the main consciousness, and it's understandable, as the films have very much moved away from depicting their relationship, and they never really did depict it all that accurately for those who are fans of comic canon. Instead, they did their own version, which some found shippable and others did not.
I don't trust a guy without a dark side. Call me old-fashioned.
Well, let's just say you haven't seen it yet.
However, post-Infinity War, which came out in April of 2018, there was a huge surge in Iron Strange. Something that had initially been a smaller ship, and people were indeed shipping it from the comic verse and before this film, but with the release of Infinity War, it completely exploded and made its way all the way up to number 18, which, given when the film came out, says quite a lot. But not everything moved up. Some things slipped off. Supercorp slipped, admittedly not far though, just out of the top 10 and into the top 20. There are still people who are really into Supercorp, but because of certain changes in the direction of the series, certain events that have occurred that fans feel were belittling them, Supercorp is not quite as popular as it once was. And there are also new femme/ships that are coming forward to take people's attention. Although again, this is just on Tumblr. On other platforms, Supergirl is a juggernaut. Another huge jump onto the list was Simbrock, especially impressive because of when the Venom movie came out. Now, Simbrock has been a potential relationship if one is reading the comics for a long time, and indeed some people have shipped it for quite a while, particularly since the 2016 comic book run, where Simbrock is just canon at this point. Although it remains to be seen whether or not that will remain to be the case, because comic canon is ever nebulous, ever changing, very difficult to keep up with, and as a result, most people have a canon where they either dropped off and that's their canon forever, or a favorite canon. No matter what else comes, that will be their canon. Indeed, the author of the current run, that being in 2018 going into 2019, Donny Cates, has actually come out disavowing this pairing, and has had some critical things to say about shippers. However, regardless of all of that, the ship really surged when the Venom movie came out, which was in October of 2018, and despite being critically panned, it did very well with audiences, some who actually loved it and felt that the critics were wrong, and others who were willing to acknowledge that it did have lots of flaws, but they still enjoyed it anyway. What many people took out of this was Simbrock, although, confession, I still wish it was called Betty. People were so into this ship on Tumblr that it managed to surge all the way up to the 14th most popular ship of 2018, just through the tag being used through the months of October and November. That's quite impressive. Simbrock surged everywhere, however, which is different than, say, certain ships such as Cat Fedora, which had a huge surge on Tumblr, but not really anywhere else. Although it is slowly chugging along, but nowhere near to the degree that it is on Tumblr. In contrast to that, Simbrock was universal. Now, of course, these are different ships and there are different factors. However, when a ship takes off, it takes off, which in no way makes one ship better or worse than the other. Some ships simply cultivate a larger appeal. It simply means they are appealing to different niches. For even at its largest, shipping is still a niche. And Simbrock took off, and people were very happy to let their freak flags fly, as it were, and declare that they were proud monster bangers. Let's go with that. Tetrophilia. Unfortunately, post-Purge, a lot of this material has vanished. But people are still uploading, and some are testing the boundaries of just what they can get away with. And that is the case with a lot of fan art, and not all of it was explicit, despite what the company would have you believe. As the CEO said, there would be mistakes. So, let's get to number 1. Number 1. For anybody who was on Tumblr, or even if you've just heard about shipping and Tumblr, you can probably guess what it is. It's the same as last year. It's Clance. Clance maintained its #1 spot, which, given Clance's extreme popularity and how attached people are to it and how much work they produce for it, it is to be expected. However, Clance's popularity began to wane towards the end of the year. So if there had been a bit more time, it is possible that it might have been overtaken, potentially by Reylo, particularly as there were a couple of weeks as the year ended where Clance was dethroned in the weekly fandometrics reports, notably by Simbrock and later Catradora, which had not been happening prior to this, say in seasons 3 or 4. However, particularly post season 7, there was a sharp decline in enthusiasm for Voltron and for many of the pairings within it, depending upon the pairing. Pairings such as Sheith had an uptake. However, Clance, there was some disillusionment as certain fans began to settle into the idea that Clance was most likely not going to be happening canonically, and that a lot of the cues that had been purported were not actually cues, or at least had not been intended as such, even if they could be read as such depending upon one's lens, some more legitimately than others. As a result, some had been misread, had been blown out of proportion, or were actually directed towards another character. Clance has now become one of those ships that has been accused of queerbait. However, it must be noted that these accusations are most likely not accurate. This is for some a very contentious statement. In all fairness to those shippers, what is also demonstrable is the fact that the cast and crew did attempt to interact with fans surrounding the pairings and the ships, and perhaps did not do so in the best way that certain fans could read as encouragement, particularly when it came to Jeremy Shada, or executive producers Laura Montgomery and Joaquim Dos Santos, though there are some who feel the cast and crew should be able to speak how they like, and they shouldn't have to walk on eggshells. The shipping landscape has very much changed, and the ways in which creators, fans, actors, everybody interacted has very much shifted, and things are taken in different ways than they were before, and what used to be appropriate in terms of marketing and fandom interaction and banter is no longer so for certain fans. Clance is a very interesting fandom moment and ship, which is very much stuck in this morphing landscape of shipping and fandom interaction. Suffice it to say, there is some bitterness from certain Clance fans, and for others there is an enthusiasm and gratefulness for what the fandom brought to them and the fact that they can still continue to enjoy it. Indeed, there are intriguing discussions being had about Clance across the various realms of fandom. This has also sparked a very fascinating discussion surrounding theorists. Shippers and theorists need not be antithetical, and sometimes they coincide, as was the case with Clance, as there were a lot of theories about sexualities and ships that were also part of Voltron alongside the plot development theories. As a result, certain fans have turned around and are now blaming fan theorists for blowing things out of proportion, or for spreading false information. All of this has led to a discussion about the responsibility that theorists owe to their audience. Do they need to constantly be reiterating that it's just a theory and that it may not happen? Or can they stick to their guns and believe that it is going to happen and be wrong? There are also conspiracy theories surrounding Clance. The idea that it was going to happen, but it was rejected at the last minute as a punishment for overzealous fans. There is a lot. There are also people who have gone back and re-examined moments that were thought to be cues from the different lens of what actually occurred in season 8, and have come to some different conclusions. However, others will contend to the very end that this was shipbait and queerbait. Clance and Voltron are going to occupy a space in fandom history for quite a long time, both for positive and negative reasons. However, it is likely that Clance will not be maintaining the #1 spot through 2019, though of course there are new fans coming to the show, and the fandom is nowhere near forgotten or gone. However, invariably whenever a show ends, the landscape changes, especially after the Tumblr changes, even if there are people who return. I really want to do a rise and fall of Clance video, even though it didn't actually fall. Just a rise and fall of the expectations surrounding Clance would be interesting, but it would be about an hour and a half long, and we'd have to talk about Leah Kira and a whole bunch of other things, and part of me really wants to. But I have so many other things that I need to do that I have yet to do. I'm aware of this. So those were the top 10 ships according to Tumblr. Did your 2018 look like this? Were you shipping any of these couples? And if not, what was your couple of 2018? What did your 2018 look like ship-wise? Are you a big Tumblr user? Have you left post-Purge? Lots of questions. Too many questions, as always, so you know the drill. Answer as many as you can, number it if possible. I love a good essay comment. And of course, as with all things shipping, we can keep it civil and fun down below. Different strokes for different folks, different opinions, different theories. That's one of the best things about fandom. But of course, it must be reiterated that this is not a bashing space, but simply one to share one's thoughts and the fun of fandom. Because fandom can be fundom, but we do have to work to keep it that way. This shirt has actually always been one of my low-key ships, but no one cares about it. No one cares about Deadpool and Domino. Sadness. At least I have this shirt. As always, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to spend it discussing fandom with me. I always appreciate it. I hope that you found this video interesting, enjoyed it, and if so, please do share it around, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that bell notification so that you never miss a vid. There are, as always, more videos coming soon, so I will see you then, and until then, let's get to that outro. Bye-bye. This has been Shipper's Guide to the Galaxy. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Special thanks to all of my patrons, names on the side, for helping to make these videos possible. There are, as always, more videos coming soon, so until then, stay tuned, for there are as many ships out there as there are stars in the sky.